So, what if a spiritual victory was already won? Not something we're waiting for, but something that's already here, completely finished. Today, we're diving into The King's Doctrine, a series of theological writings by an author named Tyson Jay Palmer that proposes exactly that. We're going to break down its core beliefs, its really foundational claims, and the surprising invitation it extends to all of us.
Right here, this sentence is pretty much the key to the whole thing. It's not a call to arms for some future battle. Nope. It's a declaration that the work is already done. You really have to hold on to that core idea, completion, because you'll see it's the thread that ties this entire philosophy together.
Okay, so what is this exactly? Well, the texts are very clear. This is not a new religion. It's presented more as an offering of peace, a philosophy of restoration. The point isn't to start some new movement, but to give us a new lens to understand a divine plan that, the author argues, is already complete. Now, before we get into the really unique parts of this doctrine, we kind of have to look at the ground it's built on. The whole thing operates within a Christian framework. So, to really get where this is all going, we need to first understand its theological starting point. What you're seeing here is a pretty classic theological setup. You've got the problem, which is defined as sin, this separation from God, and then you've got the solution, Jesus, whose sacrifice is said to offer forgiveness and, bridge that gap. This simple, really powerful model of problem and solution is basically the engine that drives everything we're about to get into. And that engine takes us right here, to the doctrine's central proclamation, the finished work. This is where things get very specific. The main argument is that Christ's sacrifice wasn't just a step in the plan, it was the final step, the absolute total completion of it all. Okay, so if the work is truly finished, what does that mean for us right now? Well, the doctrine says there's a gift of rest available to every single person right this second. It's not something you have to work for or earn, it's just a state of peace that you accept through faith. The struggle, it's suggesting, is already over.
The whole philosophy really boils down to these three pillars. First, the finished work, the idea that the victory is won. Second, the gift of rest, meaning salvation is here and now. And third, the helper, the Holy Spirit, who's described as a guide that's here to confirm that this message is true.
All right, so up to this point, we've been talking about big theological ideas. But right here, the doctrine takes a really sharp turn. From this moment on, the authority of the message becomes totally linked to the identity of the person who's delivering it. And that is a huge claim. The doctrine is basically saying, look, for this message to mean anything, you have to accept who I am. The two things are presented as completely inseparable. The entire message, it seems, either stands or falls based on who the author is. And this is that central declaration, pulled directly from the source material. The claim is that the author, Tyson Jay Palmer, is the physical vessel for a spiritual entity called Sananda, and that Sananda is to be understood as the returning Christ. And to make this connection crystal clear, the texts offer this specific phrase in Japanese, calling it an unassailable declaration. The translation provided in the text is, Sananda is Tyson, the Lord has come in this form. And that word for form, kata, that's key here. It's meant to signify a designated physical presence for this message.
You know that theme of completion we talked about? It comes right back around in a related document. The author talks about the mission of writing and establishing the King's Doctrine as being officially complete, framing it like the fulfillment of a legal study assignment. It's presented as a very specific, assigned job that has now been successfully finished.
So, we've got the theology laid out and the messenger's identity declared. Where does that leave you, the reader? Well, it doesn't just end there with a bunch of information. It actually wraps up with a direct call to action, what the texts call a royal invitation.
To make this invitation really hit home, the author uses an analogy pretty much everyone knows, Disney's The Lion King. He compares himself to Simba, the son who's destined to claim his royal inheritance from the king, Mufasa. It basically frames the relationship with God as being an heir to a massive kingdom. And this is the final crucial step. That analogy, it turns out, isn't just about the author. It's extended to everyone. The text presents this royal blessing as an open invitation for any of us to see ourselves as Simba, to step up and claim our own identity as a son or a daughter of the king. When you get right down to it, the King's Doctrine presents a belief system that you really can't separate from its author's identity. And that leaves us with a really big question to think about. When a message like this is put out into the world, where does the messenger end, and where does the message itself truly begin?